So no matter what happens, just keep sticking it to him. Now, who are we?
Main Machine. Main Machine. Main Machine. Main Machine. Main Machine.
This is the first R-rated movie I ever saw. My dad took me when I was 9 years old. I just remember caring about this group of prisoners winning this game, and you got the car chase in the first 5 minutes. You know, what could be better for a 9-year-old kid?
In college, my roommate owned it, and he said, hey, I want you to watch this movie. And I saw Burt Reynolds, like, that guy can't be a quarterback, and sure enough, he's out there running. Great form, too.
Compared to maybe North Dallas 40 or All the Right Moves, it's not even close. This was the best football movie ever made.
Jimmy Carter was the governor, who was very interested in attracting film production, called the warden up in Reedsville and said he'd like to have a shoot down there. And the warden was great. He said, God, it might just be something that will alleviate the tedium and the medium for these guys here all the time.
And we went to visit the governor, who was a man named Jimmy Carter, who was so charming and said, now, bud, I want to tell you, if they take you hostage, I will take your place. Glad of that. And Aldrich said, this man will be president someday because he's lying through his teeth beautifully. What prisoners yell at you, especially if they've seen you on television, I don't even want to go into it here, but it's a bit debasing and quite colorful.
I have worked with lots of people in the industry I liked less than I did some of those inmates.
They brought in the Augusta team, the semi-pro champions. Now, you know, in the South, we have two sports, football and spring football. And of course, these guys all thought, well, hey, I'm as big as Nitschke.
There's always guys who play semi-pro who think, if things were right, I'd be in the pros today. And a couple of guys got rough with a couple of our guys, and one you never would fuck with, named Ray Nitschke.
Ray Nitschke won lots of championships, and he just had the look. You look at Ray Nitschke and you're scared. He looks like he would gladly put his head through your chest and form a giant hole and then pull it out and look for the next guy to hit.
He was just so hard. I mean, professional athletes, you know, you slap a normal person on the back or something like that and it doesn't sting. But Nitschke, he's like granite.
One time I remember I got away on a little run, and my little legs were just running out, just like, God, this is great. I was running down the field, and 3 guys hit me. They kept it in the movie, and they drive me into a bench. I had a mask on, which in those days was just one bar. Dirt and stuff went in, and I heard Nitschke say, don't hurt him. And I went, that's great, as I was walking by. And then I heard him say, that's my job. I went, oh. So, I mean, he had dibs on me. On a Saturday night, a couple of times when he got a little drunk, he would tell me, you're giving me a couple of tips. When you double look, when you're calling out, blue, I know you're not going to throw it. And when you're really tight up under the center, I know you're going to try to stay in the pocket. And that's where I'll kill you. Well, I double looked at people I was going to throw to, and I got out of the pocket and ran like a scalded dog and threw the ball. And it's because he gave me these little things that I was doing. I didn't know I was doing it all.
You're never gonna put a team together with that bunch.
Well, I appreciate the advice.
Well, I can help you. I'm Nate Scarborough.
Nate Scarborough Giants?
Yeah. Step in my office.
I really enjoyed the practice sequences because those are hard to pull off, and usually, like in a sports movie, they'll make it too over the top or too comical.
Knees high, knees high.
And in this one, you really felt like these guys were practicing. And there's some really funny stuff in there that they sneak in.
The ball is snapped, and you go into your opponent, go into him, blocking him with your left arm, and bring this hand up into his chin. And I'll guarantee you, gentlemen, that he will be incapacitated for the next several moments.
It's interesting how he was talking about how you can punch up and break somebody's jaw, and they're going over the skeleton and everything.
Temporary disabilities. Balls, gut, ribs. You got it? Got it!
To a degree, that stuff does go on the football field, and you hear stories, especially when on pile-ups, the things that go on. I mean, heck, just recently in the opening game of the NFL season, Eric Moulds was complaining the Bills that somebody on Jacksonville stepped on his hand and on purpose while he was at the bottom of a pile and was trying to injure him.
There are guys like when you get into the piles and stuff, they're sometimes squeezing things that they shouldn't be squeezing or taking shots at you.
Now, you take this bandage, you dip it into the plaster of Paris, you wrap it around the cast, and in 15 minutes it becomes as hard as a rock. You got it? Got it!
I've definitely seen casts used as blunt objects, weapons of mass destruction on the field. And cleats have come into play here and there when guys on the ground, you get a little cleat rake on their leg. So it happens, it's real.
We had guys in the CFL, though, they took like tennis ball can and cut it in half and had the metal and used that as their forearm pads. You know, put it over top the pad and then taped over it.
That's one of the things I like about this movie is that these guys did cheat. But you felt like they're convicts, like they need some sort of edge. They're gonna get screwed by the refs. The warden's gonna bet against them.
Richard Keel could clothesline a guy and gleefully proclaim, "I think I broke his fucking neck."
I told you I broke his fucking neck.
Burt Reynolds could fire the ball into Ray Nitschke's groin and they could say he's not breathing and cart him off, and they're celebrating. Well, they're lawless anyway, and they're the oppressed protagonists, so you could root for them. Whereas when the guards do something cheap, it's because they're enforcing Warden Hazen's twisted notion of dominance and submission.
Players that had been pros, they had some pride. They're not going to give you less than all they've got. It's what made them who they are.
Knowing that they used real football players, I think, really helps. Not the first time, but when you get to that 100, 150, 200 mark, that's when you start appreciating it.
There was some hitting going on in that movie, and it wasn't in slow motion either.
It's nice from a player's perspective, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever it is, have a little realism within the sport itself.
Being a running helmet first flying into a guy, you don't have a game.
Most football movies look like hell because they look phony. When you try to rehearse tackling, you fall off the guy, it looks dumb. So what we did, we had 5 cameras. We'd run a rehearse play. Then I would go to each cameraman and say, I'm running a naked reverse. Only the cameraman knew it, and then I would call it in the huddle.
We've come too far together to stop now. For Granny, for Nate, for Caretaker. Let's do it.
I really feel like it's the first great modern sports movie. Rocky got made 2 years later. I'm not sure if Rocky gets made if Longest Yard doesn't do well. Bad News Bears is baseball. The fast break one-on-one in basketball, slap shot in hockey, and all these other sports started pumping out movies, and it was because Longest Yard did well.
Football still has this sweeping, dramatic metaphor for war style, and I think that resonates now more than it did even in the 70s.
Let's give a hand to Mr. Burt Reynolds.
They told me they were going to do it again, and I thought they would do it again. It's too good a story not to do it again. And then I thought about Adam, and I thought, well, he'll certainly be funnier than I was.
Action. Running right out of your shoes, Caretaker?
I think Chris Rock is funny. I can't wait to see him as Caretaker. I feel honored.
I'm Nate Scarborough.
When I heard Burt Reynolds was playing Nate Scarborough, I wasn't happy. Burt was Paul Crewe. I can't accept him as another character. It's like, I feel like my whole reality has been turned upside down. At the same time, I think knowing that he accepts the movie makes me think that maybe I'll watch it.
And it was fun with this film, with Adam, to tell him, you're tipping. doing what? You're tipping on a couple of things. You're doing a couple of things that are tips. No, I'm not. So I said, all right, fine. So he came up and he got over the center, and I said, you're throwing to Michael. And he went, cut. And he said, how do you know I was throwing to Michael?